All right. Today is February 29th, 2024. This is the biweekly SIG Instrumentation meeting. We have one topic on the agenda right now, which is an announcement that code freeze is coming up in, I think it's a week from today. It's on March 6th. So I think we only had a few enhancements, but if you're working on one, I have the tracing one, and I'm going to try and get PRs out this week at the latest. But we'll need to get those in by the end of the week. Are there any other topics people wanted to raise?
So I had one. I'm sorry for not adding it to the document, but I believe it's not. It's more of just to keep everyone on the same page. I'm not sure where. Okay. If I resize the window to a smaller one, it just hides the chat for me. But yeah, so I've pasted the link in the chat, and it's basically the first of many efforts to automate the release machinery in various sub projects, starting with KSM. And I talked to Manuel about this, and everything seems okay, except there's the change log that we are generating it's basically using Git. So I basically extract all the commits from the last tag, and then I remove all the fix-ups, all the merge commits, and basically all the noise as much as possible. And then what's left is what goes into the change log. But there's apparently this standard that advises to not do that and have it in a more readable manner, in a more human readable manner. I haven't seen what exactly the format is that they want, but that's something I wanted to talk about because if something is not parsable by Git or generated by Git, or we might need to pull another dependency maybe, but I don't know if this is a big enough issue to warrant for a blocker for the automation. Because so after this, I'll be drafting a standard to, if in future we have any sub projects, we could just follow that and automate the machinery there. So yeah, just wanted to know what folks think about. So I've got the link here. It's called keep a change log or something. Yeah. And essentially it's basically talking about keeping things in a more human readable manner, but yeah, it's not possible to generate that using Git. So and also this is just a request to if folks are free to just glance over the PR and just raise any concerns that you have.
Yeah. Generally, I'm not a big fan of generating changelog based on the Git history because some commits may not be meaningful to the end users. For example, let's say you fix a test or you fix or like you clean up the code. That's not really something that will be relevant to the end users because it won't really impact them. So such changes that doesn't have any impact on the users, in my opinion, shouldn't be part of the changelog. And if they were part of the changelog, that would just make it more noisy and harder to read. So that's why I would lean toward not doing it via the Git history. That said, if we look at, for example, Kubernetes, the changelog is for the most part, I think, automated. And it's based on user inputs. And that's what I think would be the most appropriated in order to build like a correct changelog. that would make sense for the users.
Yeah, yeah. So that's definitely true. We want I think the prominent use case for the changelog is to communicate to end users what actually has been merged that they can use, and not just information that they don't have any relevance to. So I was actually wondering if we could make use of we already have a linter for various PRs, and it checks the title for various prefixes. If it's a feature, it asks you to append the prepend the feat prefix, otherwise a chore and things like that. So maybe we could just look for those patterns, and users are more interested in features and enhancements, so we could just let that be there and remove the other, the chores and the style and all that stuff.
Yeah, the thing that I think is difficult to handle is whenever you have, let's say, we always expose the information that for example, Go version was updated. And if a release tends to take a long time to be released, and then you overlap multiple Golang updates, you would have like multiple changelog entries for them. So that's why I think it might be better to still leave the construction of this changelog to like developers, users, or whoever actually contributes code. And for example, that's what we did, I think, in Kubernetes or around the Kubernetes ecosystem, where changelog, like the changelog file is updated by the users themselves. And then during the release process, we just take this changelog and then put it in GitHub. So maybe you could do the same.
Yeah, yeah. Something I've also seen happening, across various popular repositories is they append, so they prepend the changes for the next release in the change log, and just when they're about to release it, they would tag it with the newer tag, and in that way, the changelog is written by humans for humans, but it's not generated, and it's exactly what the developers want to see. So, yeah, we could either we could either have it in the commit message like Kubernetes does, and ask them to basically just write that for us, and we could just pick that message from all the PRs and compile it into a changelog, or we could just maintain a changelog ourselves manually. But yeah, I think the Kubernetes one makes more sense. I will need to do something about the first automation that we do, because for that this will need to be manual because we haven't implemented that functionality currently. So yeah.
Yeah. I think it's fine as long as like there is a manual step at the end, like just before the release, to make sure that the changelog makes sense. Like maybe we do that during the time where we bump the version, like the version, the manifest, and so on. But at least like if there is like one step where we can just verify that it makes sense, then that would be fine by me. I just don't really like the fact that it's fully automated and we fully trust what's been put inside of the changelog, because we don't know that there might be some errors, that might be some things that we want to change last minute just to make it cleaner for the users. So yeah, that's the only argument I would have.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. It's that would be much better for end users to have a manually compiled list. Yeah.
But that would be super helpful. Like for example, to give you an example of metric server, which wasn't released for maybe a year or more than a year. Like it took me, I think, 2 hours in order to compile the changelog, and I had to get rid of like maybe like 2/3 of the commits content, just because like some didn't make sense anymore and so on. But if I had like the list, the proper list that where I know that every changes that is in the changelog is user facing, that would be way easier to update and improve just before the release. That would have saved me a bunch of hours for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I'll update the PR with this information. There's just there's one more thing. I think it affects us in Kubernetes itself. So I have updated. Let me just paste this in the document as well, so everyone is. Um, so recently, we had some. I think there was some feature request or something, and um, I noticed we do have the machinery in component base to, any component can import flags that we have defined, and then they can make use of them to disable metrics or, the metric cardinality cap that was recently introduced. They can make use of that. And a lot of components don't really have that currently. So, for example, I saw, um, yeah, so this thing, this was David's PR in 2017, and it's basically the way metrics are disabled currently. But we have new APIs now, and which allow them to be disabled from the user side. So, um, of course, we could refactor this to disable a bunch of default metrics, so as to not break anything. But I think there's a lot of area to cover if we decide to transition all these areas to the new APIs
I think
that yeah.
so just to give context, I know I shouldn't remember things from 2017, but I do. Um, the issue with a lot of the C advisor metrics is cost for
Yeah,
collection, right? And so C advisor has loops that are running that are scraping all of the C group files, and that's very expensive.
yeah,
So the issue with just disabling the metric from showing up on the endpoint is that that is a cost, but most of the cost is in the collection of it, not necessarily in just having the metric on the endpoint.
yeah. Um, okay, I didn't. Does this disable the metric from being generated, like from the
It does. So it disables the C advisor code path that goes and actually gets, I think, I don't remember what it was. Was it disk.io? Yeah, like ignore metrics, network, TCP usage, right? So then we won't actually go and scrape those proc files anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think
Um,
the other thing, it's not a common pattern in Prometheus, but it's a pattern I've heard of, which is being able to specify um, like a list of metrics or a list of metrics you don't want in headers or something like that. Um, that might also be an easy way for us to offer configuration that doesn't require every component to have command line args to change the set of metrics you get back. If this is just like a client side filtering thing.
yeah, and even if there's a set of disabled metrics that someone has specified, I think they should be disabled before the computation starts for them, right?
I mean, especially this is kind of C advisor specific, but especially if you're caching and fetching and caching all the metrics. If you're fetching them on demand, because they're regular metrics, then um, disabling them should also disable the computation. But if you're fetching something that's already been computed and cached, then yeah, it's helpful to be able to disable them like at the source rather than just the scraping portion of it.
But if I'm not mistaken, CAdvisor is the only one that has this problem in the KK code base, like where we cache the metrics from an external source and we don't really inject our normal client in there, our
I think
library.
does the disable flag not register the metric, or does it make it return nothing? It should not register it, right, if it's disabled?
Yeah, I think it's not registered, but like we would still scrape CAdvisor endpoint with the like whatever we want. Like for example, if it was this KIO and we would do it that way, we would still scrape this KIO file.
Right. But it would be helpful for other metrics potentially.
Yeah.
There's one underlying, so yeah, I think we could definitely look into something that would disable metrics on a like upper hierarchical level that would just serve this purpose, because yeah, but so the underlying issue that we still have here is all these components don't have instrumentation flags added to them. So it kind of breaks expectations between components. And we actually have an API, they would just have to call it and it would add all the flags. It's basically add flags. And kubelet, controller manager, yeah, all those would just have that. So I think that's something that needs to be done. But yeah, I think if we are doing that, it would be maybe wise to look into doing that at a level that does not compute them at all. Because if these command line arguments wouldn't be specified at runtime, it would be at startup. So it would be just we could safely assume that these would be just once, and if these are disabled, then they won't be enabled before it's started again. So we could just disable them entirely.
One of the things we did for the tracing config is that in component base, we have a single config, like whatever it's called, like it's not a struct, it's a like file that has all of the trace related configuration in it. And then components have a single flag or to specify the whole thing. That way, release to release, when we add config, we don't need individual flags for different pieces of the tracing config. We could consider doing something like that for metrics, so we only have to solve this problem once, release to release.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, they could specify disabled metrics flag, and then they would specify all the metrics in that file.
No, I mean, like, don't we have other metric related config? Or do we not? Is this the first metrics related flag?
I think it's the first.
Oh, wow.
We do have
Yeah.
The metrics cardinality one, which restricts cardinality beyond
Oh,
a
yeah.
certain metric count. Yeah.
Yeah, but isn't that in the same config as the one to disable metrics? Or we have two separate ones?
Like, let me share my screen quick. So this is the PR that you shared. So for example, for logs, there's just this one high level logging.logs configuration. I think for trace, there's something similar there. Trace API.trace configuration. And then there's parallel flags for each of these, so that there's only a single flag for all the logs related things and a single flag for all the trace related things. And release to release components don't need to add extra flags for specific like feature related things that we add, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Do we have a configuration for metrics? Because the one just above that, the show hidden metric flag was one of the flags that instrumentation exposes. So it was just exposed individually.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe that was the way to do it.
No, it certainly is a way to do it. I think we should consider consolidating.
Yeah, yeah. I'll update the PR and I'll even just remove this show hidden version flag from the kubelet and have it all in the matrix configuration. That would make things easier to maintain.
Or at least I would do disable the new stuff. I would consider putting in a new config. I assume if we're getting rid of old fields that there's some process we need to follow to not break people.
Yeah.
I don't know, Damien, if you have done that before.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
They should have a deprecation cycle for flags, right?
Flags, yes, but fields and component config, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Like usually you would create a new version of the config and then keep the deprecated fields around until a certain point, and replace them by new fields. But I'm not sure exactly how that would work. Maybe something to ask to SIG or maybe SIG API machinery that might have some precedence in that area. But yeah, I'm not too sure how it used to be done.
It looks like people just added Go deprecation warnings to some of the fields.
Oh.
So it just says like, deprecated, this is now ignored, but they haven't removed it from the config.
I see, I see.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll update the PR with the things we have discussed here.
Cool. It's 2 minutes left. Anything else anyone wants to bring up? All right, then I think we'll end it here. Thanks everyone for coming, and I'll see you guys on the other side of Code Freeze.
Yep. See you around. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.